Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all well, healthy, and safe. We are still working from home amidst the global pandemic that is the coronavirus, which means it's time for another video interview. Our guest today comes all the way from India, and he has a very, very cool job as a designer for Nissan Motor Corporation. Please welcome Mr. Rohit Dhiman. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, sure, man. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Can you please briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Well, I'm a car designer at Nissan Design India, essentially, but my job is quite flexible that I have to travel a lot to Japan for some of the projects that are related to India. But the execution is always done in Japan. So, the research work we do in India, but for all the execution, we have to go to Japan. And along with that, I'm also involved in the projects that are global in Nissan. So we are dealing with all kind of projects from America, from Asia, from Middle East. So it's quite interesting to work on different directions and different dimensions. Yeah, and a lot to learn. And it's been just 3 years since I've joined as a designer. So yeah, it's a beginning platform for me, but it's quite huge where I have to go right now.
So is being a designer for Nissan as fun as it sounds?
Of course, yeah. Nissan is a company that deals with all kind of segments, from small K cars to luxury vehicles like SUVs and pickup trucks. And in my 3 years of career here, I have been honored to work in all kind of segments. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to jump from one project to another and learn new things about the market and about the new places where we are conducting that project for. So, and we all also get to travel a lot for the project, for the specific area that we are working for. So that's a lot of fun, of course.
Okay, so what exactly does a designer do? What is your day like?
Well, basically, a designer's job is to simplify things, from the beginning to the end. So, of course, we start with the basic skills like sketching and all to produce one basic idea. But the whole process involves, simplifying that idea so that it's easily comprehensible to the customer. And it also should represent the Nissan or any company's particular design language and the culture. For example, Nissan is a Japanese company essentially, so we have to take care that Japanese essence is always there. So a designer's job is essentially to simplify and present something which is very matching the brief for the customer, and it should also represent the design language of that particular company. So as a designer, it's a huge responsibility because the designer is involved in every activity from management to engineering level. So we are not just involved in sketching and all, but also at the engineering level where we have to deal with the engineers and we have to understand all the technicalities of the product, and then we have to execute that. So it's a huge responsibility, of course.
So before we go into the details of your work, I just wanted to ask, the entire world is waging a war with the coronavirus as we speak.
Yeah.
How is the coronavirus affecting your job?
Well, yes, it's a very new situation for us also, because what we are left with is all the digital job at home. So we cannot interact with with other designers outside the home, and we cannot interact with the engineers as well. So all we are left with is the digital part of the design right now. But, as a part of the process, the projects that were supposed to be executed maybe a year ago or maybe a year later, so all of them have the research work that is being conducted right now. So research is the only thing that we are able to do at home. Rest, there are very confidential meetings that have to be conducted on Skype that I cannot talk about, of course. But yeah, the projects are there from all around the world still. But I want to say that even there is a big halt in the industry right now, but the designers and engineers and all the other employees are working really hard to keep the company running. And even we are working at home, we are in constant communication with everyone else so that the process is smoothly carried over.
So for designers, it might be easier to work from home, but for other people, say factory workers, for example, they might be finding it more difficult, I imagine.
They, supposedly working in shifts. So that kind of work is not able to be performed at home, because you cannot touch, or you cannot be physical with the product at home. The testing and all, it has to be conducted at the plant. All the machinery is there, so it's impossible to communicate with the engineer from here. So yeah, that kind of production thing is stopped for now. But some companies have already resumed. In Italy, I've just heard that Fiat has just reopened their plant, and in Germany also, Volkswagen is reopening their plant. So yeah, the work is getting into pace again.
So, okay, can you tell us a bit more about the designing process? How does an idea or an inspiration turn into reality at Nissan?
Basically, if we see at the fundamental level, the design starts with the customer response and it ends with the customer response, basically. So, from the customer response in the market, the management side of the design, they construct a brief. So that brief is communicated to the designer that this kind of product is needed in the market right now or in the near future. So yeah, for that, keeping that brief in mind, so every designer, starts producing their own ideas, and it's kind of a big competition in the studio. So everybody's competing for that brief, and we are all generating ideas. And after 1 or 2 months of a process of competing with each other, the executive designers, they choose 1 or 2 designs which are capable enough to compete in the market right now. So those designers win the competition, and they get to make their own cars, to get involved in the whole process till the end. And then after the digital part, the 2D drawing part, we get to the physical modeling, the clay modeling part, which is even cooler than that. So you get to play with the shape, and you can choose how the vehicle will look like, and the character is coming out or not. You can do a lot of experiments on the clay. So after clay modeling, it gets scanned, and all the data gets into again to a digital form. So where it's made just before the pre-production part is there. That is the alias modeling. So that 3D model is made. After the 3D model is generated, it gets converted to the CNC machining coding, where it gets fabricated into a prototype or something. But prototyping is also involved with engineers. Engineers, they are rushing into that part where the technicality things come in. So that is the part where designers have to compromise a little bit of the job, because what you think in the beginning, might not be able to be practical with the kind of technology that we have right now and the material constraints. So at that part, a lot of thinking and simplification is done. So we are constantly in touch with the engineers to get the things done. And, rest of the designers are also simplifying the same thing, giving the solutions to simplify the design. And once the design is prepared, it's again communicated to the management side if that resembles or it fits the brief that they have provided. So, once they pass the test, then it goes out for the motor shows and all, where the customers again review, and their response gives us, the brief for the next project. This is how the cycle continues.
Okay, so but how did all of this start for you? How did you become an automotive designer?
From since I was a kid, I was always interested in machines, basically. Machines like bulldozers or excavators. So I used to always make these kind of things at home with the paper boards, paper and wood blocks. And that was the part where my creative side of the design, or maybe problem solving, starts getting nurtured. So in the future, till the end of my bachelor's in mechanical engineering, I had no idea about car designing at that time. But only when I stepped into industry for my first internship as an engineer, I got introduced to the design department by my manager. I went to the design department and I saw everyone was sketching, and I just asked my manager, why are they sketching in the working hour? It's not the time. This is time to work. And he told me that this is their job. And that was the part when I was really fascinated about this field, and that, there are very few moments in your life when you know what you have to do. You think that there is no other option now. So, and I think we should grab those kind of moments. So I just grabbed that and I just gave up the engineering job after that. And I went to Italy to pursue masters in car design. And that's the part where my life totally changed from engineering to being a designer. But, in the industry, my engineering background helps me a lot, because we have to deal with engineers, as I mentioned. So that part is also very helpful. But this is where my life got a turn.
And some of our audience are still students with the passion for cars. Can you share any tips or advice for them to turn their hobby into a profession? Maybe become a designer like you.
Well, for young designers, I would say this is a really good time now, because post-COVID-19 situation is going to be totally different from now. You have seen the environmental changes that have been occurred during this time, and people are quite inspired with this kind of thing, and they're going to have more and more pressure on the automotive industry to come up with electric vehicles, more and more electric vehicles. And companies have a huge pressure for that to come up with cheaper technology, more affordable technology for the people. And so I think this is a really good time for young designers to show their creativity, because everything is going to restart now. So for young designers, I think your time is really good. You just jump on that, just be free, and just hone your skills as much as you can, because there is a competition that is very huge. So a little bit of discipline is very important, of course, but please enjoy your work. That's the most important part.
Thank you for that wonderful advice. I wish I heard that when I was still a student.
No, you can still do that. It's not late, right? It's never late.
Thank you. If I may ask, what is the best thing about being a designer?
Well, the best thing about being a designer is that you get to involve your personality into that, in the way you are. So, as a designer, design is something that compels you to balance things. So if your personality is not balanced first, you are not able to balance the thing physically as well. Your emotional state has to be in that kind of strength that you are able to balance different elements that are required to solve a problem or to solve the problem of the future. So I think as a designer, it has taught me to balance myself in my personal life as well. So yeah, that's a huge advantage of being a designer. And as a designer, you are involved in every activity. Designers' advice or opinion is needed everywhere, from management side to the detailing part of the products as well. So everywhere designers are being consulted. So yeah, it's a huge part of the industry where you have a huge responsibility as well, but you have a huge role to play as well for the future.
Thank you. Do you have any other final message for our Myanmar audience?
Well, yeah, I think most of the people are afraid of this COVID-19 situation because everything has stopped suddenly. But I want to ensure that the post-COVID-19 situation is going to be really, really good. If the whole situation is going to restart, and we have the opportunity to come up with better solutions which are in favor to our environment as well and well-being as well. We can be more civilized and more friendly with the nature. So I think don't take it as a negative thing, just take it as a positive thing, that other side of the situation is really, really good. So just be positive.
Thank you very much. Thank you for talking to us. And I think our audience will really appreciate the opportunity to listen to a professional in an automotive industry.
Thank you.
Don't take any more of your time. Be safe and have a great evening. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.